Hi friends, I'm back to read chapter 5 of Wish by Barbara O'Connor. Again, she is one of my very favorite authors. This chapter is a little bit longer, so I'm going to do my best to get through the whole thing. Again, I'm using my cell phone. It seems like the video quality is a little bit higher, so we're going to give it a try for the next couple of videos. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. I thought I was glad when the weekend came because I didn't have to go to school, but then Bertha told me we were going to church on Sunday. I hadn't been to church since I was little. Scrappy never wanted any part of it, calling those people do-gooders and Bible thumpers, but Mama took me and Jackie for a while. I didn't remember much about it except Jackie whining and complaining on the way there until Mama slapped her legs and told her to hush up. But then Mama got too nervous to drive and wouldn't take her bathrobe off or even comb her hair, so we stopped going. When I walked into Bertha's kitchen on Sunday morning, she looked me up and down and said, "Oh dear." She wiped her hand on her apron. "Do you have a dress?" I looked down at my jeans that were too short and my t-shirt that used to be Jackie's and shook my head. Bertha flapped her hand at me. "Well, that's okay. We'll just go shopping this week." Then Gus came in the kitchen, and I didn't hardly even recognize him. He had on a coat and tie. Instead of his usual muddy boots, he wore lace-up black shoes, buffed and shiny. He could have passed for one of those fancy rich bankers over in Raleigh, except for the garden dirt underneath of his fingernails and his hair squashed flat from a baseball cap. He sat at the kitchen table, and Bertha kissed him on the cheek. "Well, look at you," she said, making him blush and swat her hand off his shoulder. He kept pulling at his collar and wiping the sweat off the back of his neck. After breakfast, we headed down the mountain to Rocky Creek Baptist Church. When I got inside, I knew right away why Bertha had said, "Oh dear," when she saw me that morning. The other girls in church wore dresses. I couldn't look anybody in the eye, knowing my face was beet red and my jeans were all wrong. I sat on the hard wooden pew, sandwiched between Gus and Bertha. While the organist played church music, more and more people filed in, smiling and nodding at one another. Then Bertha poked me and whispered, "There's the Odoms." I glanced up to see Howard and his family carrying their Bibles and making their way to the pew across the aisle. 5 boys with slicked down hair poking each other and clomping too loud in their Sunday shoes. Their mama chatted with folks, asking about their sick grandmas and making on over their babies, while the red-headed daddy mopped his face with a handkerchief. After a prayer and a hymn, the kids had to go to their Sunday school classes. Imagine my surprise when I got to my class and there was Audrey Mitchell. She looked at me all wide-eyed like I was a Martian right off a spaceship. I sat as far away from her as I could, and then Howard came in with his up-down walk and sat right next to me. Our Sunday school teacher was gray-haired, wrinkly-faced woman named Miss Mackey. She didn't waste 1 minute telling everyone that my name was Charlie Reese and please welcome me to their church family. Then she taught us this song called Good Old Noah. Howard sang louder than anybody, and personally, I thought it was a little embarrassing, but nobody else seemed to pay him any mind. After that, Miss Mackey told us we were going to play a game called Bible Detective. She would read questions from her Bible Detective cards, and whenever you answered one right, you got a Bible buck. When you got enough Bible bucks, you could cash them in for a prize. While she read the questions, the boys fidgeted and the girls whispered and giggled in their dresses while I kept quiet in my ugly jeans. How many braids were in Samson's hair? Name the man who went down into a pit on a snowy day to kill a lion. In what book, chapter, and verse can we read about a winner of a beauty contest becoming a queen? Howard's hand shot up every time, but I knew for sure I was never going to win any Bible bucks. After Sunday school, all the grown-ups and kids gathered in the fellowship hall. Bertha paraded me around like I was a beauty queen, introducing me to everybody, and making on over me, saying how lucky she and Gus were to have me staying with them. People nodded and said, "Ain't that nice?" and stuff like that, but I bet they were wondering why my own mom and dad couldn't take care of me, and didn't I know girls don't wear jeans to church? When Bertha introduced me to Howard's mama, she hugged me and said Howard had told her all about me. Then she craned her neck, looking around the room. "Mr. Odom must be outside, and I'll never catch those wild boys of mine long enough to introduce you to them." Some of the Odom boys chased each other around the room, their ties loose and their shirt tails flapping. They grabbed brownies off paper plates while Howard showed everybody his Bible bucks. "But you come on to my house any time, okay?" Miss Odom said. Bertha grinned at me. "Now wouldn't that be nice, Charlie?" I nodded and said, "Yes, ma'am," because I knew that was what I was supposed to say. When we finally climbed into the car and headed back up the mountain towards home, I scanned the woods and yards along the way, hoping I'd see that stray dog again, but I didn't. What I did see, though, was a truck full of hay. Jackie's friend Casey told me that if you count to 13 when you see a truck full of hay, you can make a wish. So, of course, that's exactly what I did. Things at school seemed to get worse every day. My homework papers came back all marked up by Miss Willoughby in red pencil with notes like "see me" and "try again." Sometimes I didn't even do my homework. It seemed like a waste of time since I wasn't going to be there much longer. Once in a while, Bertha asked me if I had homework, and well, I was pretty good at shrugging and changing the subject. Besides, I was used to getting marked up papers like that because back in Raleigh, I wasn't exactly student of the year. Jackie was the only one who ever fussed at me for not going to school or not doing my homework, but I reminded her that she was not my mother, so she should leave me alone. When my teacher called the house to tell Mama how bad I'd done on my math test or ask why I hadn't turned in my book report, Mama would holler and carry on for about 5 minutes. Then she'd throw up her skinny arm and heave a big sigh before she said, "What's the use?" Then she'd shuffle out of the room in her bathrobe and slippers, muttering about how she didn't deserve this aggravation. At least in Raleigh, I had friends at school, but here, when I sat at a table in the cafeteria, girls made faces like they smelled something bad and slid their trays away from me. Most days, I pretended like I had a stomachache and spent the afternoon in the nurse's office drawing more stars and hearts on my arm with a marker. At recess, Howard followed me around, reminding me that he was my backpack buddy and asking questions a mile a minute. "Do you ever visit your dad in jail? Why ain't your sister here too? You want some of my Bible bucks?" Sometimes I answered him, and sometimes I didn't. The thing about Howard was everything just rolled right off him. It didn't seem like nothing bothered him one little bit. It was clear that nobody at school wanted much to do with him, but he didn't seem to mind. His brother Dwight was always surrounded by cussing, punching, ball-tossing, fist-bumping boys, but Howard never joined them. A couple of times when I rode to town with Gus and Bertha, I'd see his older brothers Burl and Lenny tossing a football or shooting hoops with their friends. But Howard would be sitting on the steps scribbling in a notebook or over by the garage fiddling with a bicycle. Bertha had commented about him one day when we drove by. "That poor boy is so much of a loner," she said. "Nothing wrong with that," Gus said. Bertha shook her head. "Not for a child. Children need friends," Bertha sighed. "I don't get it. He's just as sweet as can be." "I bet it's 'cause of his up-down walk," I said. "Well, that's mean," she said. She turned around to face me. "You're going to make so many new friends here in Colby, Charlie. I just know it." I stared out the window and pretended like I wasn't even listening to her go on and on and on about all of the things I could do, like Girl Scouts and 4-H. She told me about her friend Janelle, who lived in Fairview and had a daughter my age. We could visit them Saturday if I wanted to, or maybe we could go to the mall down in Archville. On and on she went, talking as if my life in Colby was going to be like living in Disney World. "You're going to talk that girl's head plumb off, Bertie," Gus said. Bertha laughed and slapped him playfully on the arm. "Where do you think that dog is?" I asked Gus. "Could be anywhere," he said. "That mutt sure gets around." I'd been looking everywhere for that stray dog. I'd seen him twice since the day he'd come to Gus and Bertha's, but both times he darted off into the woods when he saw me. "He sure loves my meatloaf, I can tell you that," Bertha said. "He licks the pan clean and then hightails it out of there so fast I hardly get as much of a glimpse of him." I leaned back against a seat and sighed. I bet I was never going to catch that dog. And what if I did? Could I really keep him? Mama would probably have a hissy fit. But I bet Scrappy would call from jail and tell her to stop her yammering and let me have a dog if I wanted one. Then, as we were turning onto the main road into town, I saw a black horse out in a field eating grass and swishing its tail at the flies. I shook my fist at it 3 times and made my wish. That was the rule for black horse wishing. If you see a white horse, you just make a wish. But for a black horse, you have to shake your fist 3 times. I'd learned that one from Scrappy, which made me a little skeptical, but I did it anyway. Shook my fist and made my wish. All right, friends, that's everything for Chapter 5 of Wish by Barbara O'Connor. My wondering and question for this time is, why does Charlie not want to make friends? It seems like she's not really interested in making any friends in Colby. I wonder why that is. I am excited to read to you Chapter 6 tomorrow. Stay kind, stay patient, and practice social distancing because I want to see you sooner rather than later. Bye, guys.